closing a large, complex sale is a lot like lobbying. It's a lot of politics. And politics is kind of has a pejorative tone to it. Some people like it, some people love it. But I'm not talking about government politics. I'm talking about company politics. And the distinction here, as far as politics, is that we think buying something, all we have to do is work the logic, the administrative side of it, the reasoning, the ROI. But what ends up happening is it changes people's careers. People are taking risk. People are losing or gaining opportunities. And learning the administrative side of getting a large deal done can be complex. And I have found probably less than 1% of salespeople understand what it is. They think they just throw in a proposal and out comes a PO and, oh, you just answer procurement's questions and get them the paperwork they need. Well, there's a lot more to it than that. And when I talk to sales leaders, number one out of all the issues, well, I'd say maybe number two. Number one is getting meetings, of course, because marketing, especially in B2B, has become diminishingly effective because of noise, because people are sick of getting bombarded with ads, emails. But where deals go to stall is after you give them a proposal. Why? Because then they have to get something done. And everybody thinks it's money. It's never money. Money becomes the excuse, like time becomes the excuse when you want to talk to somebody. They have the time, they don't have the interest. People are believing other people's excuses. And in the large complex sale, we have to learn how to manage the politics. And today I have somebody who used to do that, used to be on the government political side, and is now applying those skills to the business-to-business world. And we hear how transferable some of them are in that adjustment of sales. I hope you'll enjoy this episode. This is part of my series on interviewing the world's best salespeople. If you happen to know one of the world's best salespeople, drop me a line on LinkedIn. If I haven't replied to your past requests, just drop me another one. Been a little busy over here trying to help out the sales world. Doing the best I can, though. Let's get into the interview. I'll sum it up at the end. If you're in the courses already, make sure you're checking out the office hours and the one-on-ones. If you're not in already, you might want to think about it. Time's not on your side. There's no pause. There's no delay. There's no hold it, Brian. Just stop my life for a few minutes while I close some deals. No. You either win or you lose in sales. There's no second place. Here we go. Hey, Michael, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Hey, Brian, thank you. So my name's Michael Galloway. I'm not one of the guys that shows up on your podcast and says that I've always wanted to be in sales.
No.
I'm an accidental salesman.
Yeah. What happened? Rehab?
Yeah, right. Yeah, in a way, yes. My first career was in politics.
Wow.
So, coming out of school, I moved to Washington, D.C. to change the world and went to work for my hometown congressman and ended up there 12 years. Worked for 3 members of Congress, was the chief of staff to a member of Congress, and a healthcare lobbyist and a hospital association executive. And then, the rehab part, right? It's, this isn't maybe exactly where I want to raise my family. It's maybe not exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. And then you start looking around, what else is there for a congressional staffer and lobbyist that's not in Washington, D.C.? Yeah. So you find your way to something else, and I've been very blessed that I found my way into sales.
Well, I mean, politics it's a lot of selling, right? It's a lot of
a ton.
Yeah,
a ton.
I think by definition, it's kind of either selling, communicating, hearing people out.
Yeah, you learn a lot of good lessons in politics that translate very well to enterprise sales. Yep. You have a diverse constituency.
Yes, you do.
People that want you there, people that don't want you there. And to be effective, you have to be able to figure out a way to work with everybody. Um, and one thing I would say about politics specifically, but maybe my career in general, I started out, working for a congressman. And then I went to a lobbying firm, and part of the lobbying firm was you had to be able to get your own clients. And when you talk about sales, right, that's the business development side. You have to sell a client to hire you.
Yeah.
But you, as a lobbyist, you don't actually sell anything. There's nothing tangible.
Right.
You identify some pain, you attempt to put together a plan that's credible of how we're going to mitigate that pain for the client. And then you have to take that plan to the Congress and to the executive branch and sell them that it's a good idea and in the best interest of the country. Um, so it's a very intangible sale, and it's difficult.
Well, I would think that's kind of one of the hardest sales,
Yeah,
right? Because you can't really guarantee anything.
nothing, nothing. Now we're going to work as hard as we can work, and our clients have these success stories that we
Yeah.
can tell you, and we can give you the references, and you can do your due diligence. But at the end of the day, it's politics, and sometimes they don't pass bills at all,
Right.
much less your stuff didn't get into it.
Yeah.
Uh, so it can be it's difficult, um, but the risk rewards there when you're talking at scale, right? When you're talking about what it means to have legislation change a tariff or change this or that. It's worth swinging for the fences on the client side.
And did you get good at that, or was it just overwhelming and
You know,
frustrating?
yes. Uh,
Yeah.
um, I'd like to think that I certainly got better while I was doing it. And you talk about the lessons and how you get them. Some of them were expensive, um, but yes, when I finished, I was better than when I started.
Yeah.
And I would say that now, that in this current role, yeah, I think that's kind of incumbent on me to constantly be evolving and constantly be changing and constantly be modernizing the approach and making sure that it's appropriate for the right situations. Um, but what I would say that was very helpful to me in my DC time before I was truly, a quota carrying rep, which I am now, was I had the opportunity to switch sides of the table. And I know you've talked about this with other guests and have had the opportunity yourself. But when I was when I started as a staffer, I didn't truly appreciate the lobbying role. I didn't understand exactly what they were thinking in our meetings.
Yeah.
And when I went to be a lobbyist, I was a better lobbyist because I'd been a staffer. And then I had the chance to go back and be a staffer. And I was a better staffer the second time than I was the first time, having been on the lobbying side of the table. And really, I think those lessons um, have helped lead me to where I am. The second time I went back as a chief of staff. So that's an executive position where you're obviously not the member of Congress, but you're responsible for everything that happens on the political side and on the operational side of the congressional office. Multi-state, decent sized budget. Uh, Obviously, it's politics. So people are passionate about their positions, and
Yeah.
a lot of times you have to be a calming influence. Um, but getting that executive experience, I moved into healthcare IT, which is where I am now, and went to the ops side. I was on the operation. I was a VP executive, reported to the CEO. Dealt a lot with healthcare IT vendors that were trying to sell to us, um, which I think helped me when I switched now into my current role back into sales.
Yeah.
Zigzagging back and forth, I think one of the things that helps this role be successful, and also the operations role helps anyone be successful, is to really be able to put yourself in the mind of who you're talking to.
Yeah. And that's great experience. Now, help me understand like your personal motives because you're the first person I've ever interviewed that came from a political background.
Yeah. So personal motives of why do you go to Washington, right? I mean, you're right out of school, you're idealistic, and
yeah, because that doesn't necessarily align with sales. It kind of is. It's intriguing. It's
yeah,
it's
it's very
engaging.
strategic. So there are a lot of corollaries you can draw there. Every time that you are trying to do something in politics, there's at least one, many times, many people trying to keep you from doing it.
Yes, I noticed
Okay.
that.
And and you think about politics maybe as a chessboard would be an analogy that makes sense. If I move this piece, they're going to move that piece. They don't know I've got this piece over here that I haven't used yet previously. Not an exact analogy, but it's very strategic. It's very much of action reaction, and that translates very well to enterprise sales.
That part I do get. So the mental challenge excited
Yeah,
you.
yeah, it's the mental challenge of being able to map out, this is where we are, this is where we want to be, and then having the flexibility to not try to do it the same way every time.
Yeah.
But to have some guiding principles and things that maybe you've taken a misstep in the past that allows you to say, well, the last time I did it just like that, it went really badly for me. So I need to do something different, but let's, instead of doing it just like that, let's do it kind of like that. And
right, because certainly in the larger enterprise sales, it's very political. People think it's pure economics and logic, and it's like,
no. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. And we all know companies that operate in silos, and I think that's a challenge that literally every enterprise struggles with. Is how do we be cross siloed? How do we be cross matrixed? How do we set aside territory and turf and ego for the benefit of the organization and the customer? No one has that perfectly right. There are various degrees of how wrong it is.
Well, because you see the shows like House of Cards or the mafia shows, because people don't expose their real interests.
That's right.
They expose what they want you to see.
Mm-hmm. That is 100%, and that is true in enterprise sales.
Yes, it is. Very much so. And as reps, we're like, well, that makes perfect business sense. Well, but no, it's going to affect someone's career.
Right.
So they care.
Is the risk reward profile, regardless of the economics. If you're doing a major software implementation and it goes badly, that affects someone's career in a way that they may or may not be able to recover from. Regardless of the economics, if it goes well, the downside can be bigger than the upside is great. And
right, because if it goes well for the company, it doesn't mean it goes well for each person in the company.
Exactly. So, it's really interesting. I think one of the things that I've been really working to get better, and again, I think that sales is a journey. I don't think you're ever there. I do think you can get better and better and better if you put the time in to do things like, I've gotten a lot better watching your pod. I probably haven't gotten as much better in 2020 as I was in 2019, because you were my go-to download the pod on the airplane on my way to meetings and try to tease out a few nuggets that I could implement. Hadn't logged as many air miles in 2020 as I did in 2019. So really I'm consuming your content probably more on LinkedIn right now. But I think if you are dedicated to trying to be better, and you're seeking out outside resources, you're seeking out, the brutal truth, you're reading the Challenger Sale, you're reading the Trusted Advisor, you're reading business strategy books to help you understand what maybe the other guy is thinking, or because, I think that all of that really matters. And I think too, the piece that has been really helpful for me is I'm continually getting better at actually qualifying leads. And it's really given me a lot more time to work deals that have a chance to close and not chase deals that never had a chance to close. I just needed them or wanted them to close. And so I was viewing them through that lens.
That's that that utilization of time is the difference between like the A player and the B player.
Yeah. I mean, and they could easily just be they could easily have the same skills post qualification. They just don't have enough time to grind enough hours to get enough signatures.
Yeah, because that time you can't get more of.
No, and it's very precious. It's also, I think I've become a lot more cognizant of time with a prospect is becoming more and more precious.
Yes.
In any form.
Yes.
Just getting them on the phone, on a Zoom, which is, a little bit new. 2019, I did exactly 0 video conferences. Never did one. If there was a meeting, I was getting on an airplane.
Yep.
and was happy to do it. I'm sort of rethinking my strategy for this year. In that I'm going to continually overqualify and try to do that remotely. And then once I feel comfortable that this is a prospect that meets my qualification criteria, and we can talk about that a little bit in a second, but then I'll get on an airplane, because I can have a lot of conversations from my desk like we're having right now. And I have to have some number of conversations before that turns into a contract. And being able to have 25 conversations in a week or 5 is easier to do from my desk than it is to do from the skies or from a hotel.
Yeah.
And then when I do start traveling and getting back in front of my clients and prospects, it's going to be a whole lot more efficient.
I think it's a good skill because it kind of forces you to become good at it. And there's nothing beats face to face, but if it's face to face with somebody who's not going to buy within your window,
that's right.
That's very expensive, not from a money standpoint, but from time.
That's right. But I attempt to talk to a lot of people.
Yeah. And
very few of those people that I talk to are what I now consider to be a qualified prospect.
Yeah.
And everybody's got some different criteria of how they qualify prospects. I think I've learned a lot on that from listening to you talk to people. The big one for my business is they have to be able to tell me. Often I can walk into a room and know what their problems are, and they don't know them.
Yeah.
Me telling them that doesn't go very far. No. So we have to have a conversation and kind of guide them to a realization through me not talking and me asking a lot of questions. And then every time I finish talking, there's a question mark at the end. And that part, if I can lead them to understand that they may have a problem, that's step one. But if they can't quantify it, they're not going to spend any money to fix it. And they can quantify it qualitatively. That's not as good as quantitatively a lot of times, but I have to be able to have a discussion with them, not about how great the future state is going to be. We have to talk about how you can't live like this any longer because it's costing you in terms of an agreed upon something.
Yes. And that brings up is what I'm finding is that a lot of people, they have symptoms of problems, but they don't want to really admit they have a problem.
No. And they lie to you. They will actually tell you
sometimes, right?
Yeah. Enterprise sales too, Brian, I've gotten a lot better at that. I would say when I first started in enterprise sales, someone would call me or I'd have a conversation and they'd say, I have a problem. You do this. Can we do a demo? Can I have a proposal and let's move forward? There were plenty of times where I said, sounds great. I've got a prospect. Let's put it in the pipeline.
Yep.
close next month, close next quarter. It never works like that. When they tell me what their problem is, I use that as a springboard for a conversation. And very, very often they are not treating their problem. They're treating a symptom. And I'm leaving a lot of revenue for our company and value for the client on the table by not actively working with them to figure out exactly what their problem is. And if we're a good fit, great. I'd almost rather, not rather, but it's as important to me to know if we're not. Yep. Because right. Again, going back to the qualification, right? I've only got so much time.
Yes.
And if their real problem is not something that we are prepared to address well, it's going to be very, very difficult to win if I win it at all. And if we win it, the client's not going to be thrilled.
Right, because I see those inbound ones where they're really trying to buy something that's going to fix a part of the problem. But then when they try and go and get money, someone's going to push back and go, can it wait? Can you buy less? Can you go do your due diligence? And the sales process starts all over again.
And those generally don't end well, in my experience. No. I think, the sales process to me is a bit like a roller coaster. And once you're in it, and you're not getting off. You're not getting off at the end early and starting over. Like you're going. And from the buyer's perspective, they don't want to start over. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, man, I'd really like to have some in-depth conversations with some sales guys so I could come up with some problems that I didn't know I had. Like you've got to understand where they are. And it's really important to understand both the organizational, but also the personal goals. Yes. If you're working with somebody in the business that's a VP and they are looking to elevate their stature in the company and maybe join the C-suite or have some successes under their belt they can point to when they work with a recruiter to move to a C-suite at another organization, that's a different sale for me than if I'm working with somebody who is measuring everything in terms of dollars and cents. Yeah. And success is we get 4 times ROI or 40 times ROI, and failure is we get 3 times or 30 times, right? That's I approach those very differently.
And what other things have you learned along the way that you think the audience would gain value from?
If they can't tell you how much their problem's costing, they will not spend money to fix it.
Right.
And
because then it looks like when they go to get money or go to walk it through the process, someone's going to ask that.
Yeah.
In some form. They may not say what the ROI is, but it's like, well, can't we do okay with what we have?
Right.
Is it a cheaper, easier solution? Can it wait 6 months or a year?
Of course. All the time. That's the default. People don't want to change.
And they don't want to spend money.
No.
Nobody gets up in the morning and says, this money, I got to get rid of it.
I sometimes think some of the people at my house think that, but no one in business.
Get rid of your money. So if they had to work for it, it's like...
That's right. The other thing that I think that people would need to know, there's a tendency, and I have done it, to where when you first get going, and boy, you're putting in all the research. I mean, you're pounding over everything from, local chamber of commerce, economic stats to sell something to a hospital or a health system, which is what I do. And, being really conversant in the economics of the local community and really tailoring what you're doing to them. And you have a little success and then you kind of stop doing it. Maybe you don't spend that last hour of prep. Maybe you don't take that last note in the meeting or in the demo. And that's where you've got to do it. It's kind of non-negotiable. Prospecting the same way. Nobody really likes to prospect and cold call and, go to trade shows and try to strike up conversations in the cocktail hour. But to be successful in a highly competitive sales environment, you have to be very detail oriented and do it the right way every single time.
And I think it comes back to being ruthless with your time, because, and that's the excuse everyone would give, right? Oh, I'm so busy with these other things that won't close that I didn't have time to do the thing to help this thing that could close.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, you can fly around and have a ton of meetings and be leaving voicemails and, hey, did you get the proposal? And you can spend weeks just doing that, and you're no closer to selling anything than you were when you started.
Yeah.
And that's an easy trap to fall into.
It's the natural trap. And it takes discipline to think through those deals. And reps have a hard time with that. How do you know if it's going to close? Well, it's
right.
Judgment, right?
Yeah, but there's some questions you need to have the answers to, and
yes.
I don't think it's ironclad. I mean, I hit on the pain of not changing, right? So that's one. Yeah. Timeline, organizational process to try to get out in front of where you're going to have hiccups. Does this one need to go to a board? Do you have the spending authority? Who else in this organization has the ability to say no or to delay? Yeah. And you have to be out in front on that and be talking to those people. Some of them you will never get to fully embrace the project and be a champion to push it through internally, but you have to at least get them comfortable that it's worth doing. Yeah.
And I could see the political background having develop that skill, anticipation, being proactive and predicting what's going to happen, and not getting locked into the emotional side of, this is such a great idea.
Right. Yeah. No, that's very helpful. Because it's a lot of if then, and it's right. If I say this, how are they going to respond? And as you spend more time developing your own skills and your own methodology, the patterns start to emerge.
Yes.
And you can get to the point of, what they're going to say when you ask them the question. And that feels a whole lot better and allows for a lot more success than not knowing and not being prepared for the answer.
Well, I think, if you don't have that curiosity and interest and empathy to say, okay, if I ask this, what are they going to say? Most likely. And then if they say that, how do I build off of that and not just crumble?
Yeah. Either way, right? Sometimes you ask a question, there are 4 answers. Don't have budget, too many competing priorities. You have to know how you're going to ask the next question, not tell them. What's the next question you're going to ask after that to guide them to a place that you want them to be? And
because that's it. And those people call those objections, but they're really excuses.
Sure.
It typically means that you didn't build up any curiosity and interest.
That's right.
And you're moving too fast.
Right. 100%. So, you asked me earlier, and we got into it a little bit about what if someone was going to be in enterprise sales today. There is no detail that's not important. And you, the rep, don't have the objectivity going in to determine what's important and what's not important. So treat them all like they're very important. And I lost my first enterprise deal on that lesson. And learned it since then. I had a room full of people. I had a great relationship with the decision maker, the guy who controlled the budget. We demoed to the team. There were a couple questions about features and functions for the software solution. Yes, we have it. Here it is. Everything was great. We go into reference, and I didn't coach my reference on one, what I consider to be very minor feature that the reference didn't even use. And that lost the deal for me. There was someone on the team. They said, tell me about how this works. And the reference says, I don't even know if they have it. We don't use that. Now I didn't get a call back saying, you said that you had this, and then the reference said, no, they just signed a contract with somebody else. Right. Okay. And in the debrief, the post-mortem, that's a very minor feature in a 7-figure software solution that other clients didn't even have turned on and didn't know it existed. They saw so little value in it. Yeah. I discounted it, but my client didn't. Right. And I lost the deal. So,
well, I always had this saying, and I tell either the reps or my engineer, I go, I've never over-prepared for a meeting.
Right.
Where you come out of certainly a first call, where you go in and it's like, do I have an unfair advantage in this meeting? Do I know something that I know is going to light their fire?
Yeah.
And have I thought through, what they're going to say, the delays? And I used to have a manager who his mode was, let's just go in and see what happens. And it's like, does any sports player just, roll out of bed and see what happens?
No film prep, no, we'll see who I'm guarding tonight.
Yeah. Well, there's like the Tiger Woods documentary on HBO right now, and you just watch this guy practice. Here he is, the best of the best, and he just practices, and he knows how to hit a golf ball.
Yes.
But he knows the distinctions are so minor.
And it's the difference between in sales, and I've heard you say it. I mean, there's no commission for coming in second.
There's none.
You win,
you did all the work,
or you lose.
You did all that work.
And from the corporate perspective, your company didn't benefit. Your customers, your coworkers that they didn't increase revenue this year. Well, It's hard. It's hard to consistently track every one of those details. It's really easy to think in an enterprise sale that the meeting with IT is just perfunctory because they can't sign the contract, right? But IT can say no. They may not be able to say yes, but IT's killed a lot of deals for a lot of reps because they felt like their concerns weren't being understood.
That's it. I'm going through this exercise right now where we're doing a lot of sales kickoff talks. And, the first step is we have a Zoom call, typically CEO, CRO, VP of marketing. And I'm trying to get to the problem they want to solve in my presentation.
Yeah.
And without a doubt, they all say, we really don't have a sales problem, Brian. We just want somebody to come in and they don't know what they want me to do. And I go, well, you're not going to pay money for me just to entertain people.
Right. You can get the parody videos. I'll send you the
I'm not
YouTube
the cheapest and I'm probably not the most entertaining. So I'm not going to get the deal unless I find a problem. And I go, the first thing I say is like, so let's talk through your sales process. And I try and do it from backwards forwards. Okay, like last quarter, how many of the things that forecast closed? And they're all well under 50%.
Sure.
So that means, I don't know, if somebody cut your income in half, would that be an income problem?
Yeah. Yeah. And people,
the call just starts to roll after that.
Yeah, of course. And the forecasts are never going to be totally accurate. They're forecasts for a reason. Right, but if they're qualified well, then it's more than throwing darts.
Well, and the amount of effort that went to get it to the point where it was forecastable.
Right. Big, big.
Huge. And you're never
So
going to
let
get
me ask you,
fired. Go ahead.
yeah, kind of, I got a quick question for you, if you don't mind. And you spend a lot of time railing against the evils of the CRM and the management by activity count and Mr. Pepperoni and some other some other great content. What are you seeing when you work with businesses and organizations? Because put on the same hat. If I'm our president and sales aren't where they want them to be, and I'm probably going to look at the data I have to try to tease out some insights, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I know as the rep that's the data that the executives are going to look at, then I'm going to make sure that data doesn't look like I'm not doing my job.
Right.
But so when you're working with maybe not as much sales leaders, but C-suite executives and maybe chief revenue officers, maybe VPs or sales, how do you work with them on how to use the CRM as a tool to amplify your sales force as opposed to maybe an anchor that's holding it back?
I think the first thing is you do not talk about what's in the CRM. You talk about what they're running into, because you you get the exact observer effect in your case. If I
Mhm.
say, oh, you only made 50 calls, that's why you're not making your number. They will touch the dial button 50 times every day. But sales goes down then because they're touching the button instead of thinking about how to close a deal.
Right. And thinking is not there's no field for thinking in our CRM. I can tell you, and I've never worked anywhere there
And a
is.
lot of people think that thinking doesn't come without effort.
Right.
Thinking is effort.
Yes.
So I take them through. Okay, so there's the problem today we have is there's this pile of stuff in the CRM or on the internet that you can spend your time on.
Mhm.
How do you develop that judgment skill to prioritize that? And who's most likely to have the problem that we solve?
Mhm.
And really dig into what is working and focus, double down on that, because the activity is taking people away from what is working to work
Sure.
on what isn't going to close.
That's right. Yeah. There's an opportunity that maybe now I know, after some years of pain, I know this one's not really going to close. It's a level one, it's a prospect. I'm not even saying it's qualified, but how many times do you need to call into that account and leave a voicemail with no response, um, versus going to spend your time on something else? And I think that nuance has in an American sales and American industry is lost.
It is, because what ended up happening was when the CRM came out and then the books were written by people in the tornado, where there was brand recognition, demand, and unfair advantage with their product.
Hmm.
And activity was 80% of winning in that space.
Uh-huh.
But if you're in no brand recognition, no problem understanding, and they don't know who you are, and they don't even realize the problem is something they care about yet.
Right.
Activity is 20% and skill is 80%.
Right.
And people don't want to admit that. They just think that activity will solve all problems.
Mhm.
But if you're running in the wrong direction, you're never going to get to the other place.
So how well do you think that lesson is received? I realize the delivery is very nuanced and takes skill,
Yeah,
but
it's
when
typically
you,
not received well because it takes work.
Mhm.
And people, it's so much easier just to yell than it is to help.
Sure,
And
yeah,
but I've done 12 startups in my life, and you know I think one we had some kind of brand recognition, had some kind of inbound. Most of them it was really hard,
yeah,
and I was not, I didn't want to work 100 hours a week. I wanted to work 60 or 70 and make a lot of money.
Right.
So I focused on what I call Sophie's choice. Okay. Both of these deals look okay, but if I only could pick one, which one would I pick?
Right.
You know, the old saying, if you chase two rabbits, you catch no rabbits.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And I mean, I think this is wrapping back to where we started the call.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be successful in sales and to be efficient in sales, you are the resource, and you can't just always work harder. If you want to make more money and you work in 15, 16 hours a day consistently, you're not seeing your family. Why are you making the money? You can't even use it. You're
The
exhausted.
natural thing is you're chasing too many rabbits.
Yeah. So, really focusing on, if I wanted to learn, if I was talking to a young lady in college, and she came up to me and she said, Michael, I really want to be in sales. And I've had a few of those. I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Alabama. I teach a class a semester remotely. And, occasionally I'll get into a discussion with somebody. How do I get into sales? And, they're go Google it. Everybody's looking for salespeople because there aren't enough really good ones. There are a lot of warm bodies that have
people
15 8-month stops. But there aren't a lot of really needle moving, difference making salespeople out there. And for you to be one of those, you have to learn how to listen at a level that you've never listened before. You have to be detail oriented at a level that you have not been before in this format. It's detail oriented in a way that's not detail oriented like a math problem or building an Excel sheet or a pivot table. You have to be detail oriented to that. This is detail oriented in a way that people generally aren't detail oriented. And you never get there. You always get better. But to be able to end every sentence with a question, and while the other person is talking, you're recording what you're hearing and not thinking about what you want to say to it. That is a learned skill. That's not it's not innate in human beings.
No.
And you have to be really deliberate in the way you go about your business to get it.
Yes.
And so that's what I tell people. I mean, you think that in sales, you're going to show up, you're going to tell everybody how great your stuff is, you're going to ask them what they want to buy, and they're going to say, give me a proposal, let's move. That's how people that start in sales think. It's how I started in sales. That's what I thought.
Right. And the problem is that I think there's a few companies out there that can work, but it's not the rest. The vast ocean of people are selling things that other people don't know what they do, why they need it.
Sure.
And it's
particularly enterprise.
Absolutely.
If you want to sell big deals and you want to generate big value for your clients and then be compensated appropriate to the value you're generating, you have to be sophisticated in the way you go about your business. And you have to do it in a way that's not just innately natural to being a human being like everyone else. And so what I would, I tell people to subscribe to your podcast. I think you do a great job of teasing insights out of people that, they're not necessarily common sense.
Right.
But they make sense when you hear it. And if you're deliberate about how you're consuming, I'm deliberate about how I consume a lot of your content. And I take a little note and I'll say, you know what? I need to stop doing that. And I need to start doing this. And I've learned a lot from your guests and I've learned a lot from you. But you have to, if you want to be successful in sales, you have to want to be successful in sales.
Yes.
And you are the only person that's really going to make that happen. Yeah, you may have a manager that can coach you and give you some really good feedback. And I'm blessed to have one of those now. But that can't be the only place you're learning. Your manager's got a team of reps. Your manager's got an executive level that she's interacting with. She's coaching a bunch of reps. You got to take control of it for yourself.
Oh, cool. Hey, Michael, I really enjoyed this conversation. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Yeah, on LinkedIn, Michael Galloway. And love to, anybody has any questions, hit me up there.
Understanding these politics of deals is probably one of the more complex parts of the B2B sale. Nobody really teaches us this. It's folklore, it's guessing, it's a kinesthetic feeling that people have. It's hopefulness, it's avoiding thinking about it. But at the end of the day, you either get the order or you don't. What you hear back is not going to be the truth. It's going to be, oh, we're going to reevaluate in 3 months, 6 months, 6 years, never again. They're not going to tell you the truth. And this is kind of the unspoken language of how organizations run. It has something to do with the org chart, but typically doesn't follow exactly the org chart. We have to look for certain personality types that need to get this deal done or want to get this deal done. Yes, it has to make logical sense. It has to make economic sense. It has to make business sense. And it also has to make political sense for the people. And when people make decisions, they're not going to give the real reasons. And if you want to understand this better, maybe studying politics, listen to both sides. Now, this is not about politics in general. It's about how people position and reposition. And lawyers tend to make pretty good salespeople. The best lawyers are salespeople. When they go in to make their case, they're breaking down the opponent's case. They're building up their own case. They're working off of both emotions and logic. And too many of us in sales, we get comfortable. We assume that since the person that we're talking to wants it, needs it, can afford it, that it's going to get done. But then when it doesn't, who pays for it? You paid for it. And if you really look at the investment that you make in every deal, simply take your on-target earnings or your the goal that you want to have for your income. Let's say it's $500K a year. You divide that by 2,000. Okay, so that's $250 per hour. That's how much you're investing of your time in a deal. And that might be 10 hours, 100 hours. That's a lot. And for it to not close means that you threw that money away. And what the scary part is you can always make more money, but you can't make more time. Meaning that if you're early in your career, every time you learn how not to fall into these traps of the B2B sale, how do you learn how to win more deals, that compounds over the number of years you're in it. And that is the exception, not the rule. Now, I talk to B2B salespeople all day long. I was one, and I am one, my whole career. And I separated out the Mavericks from the A players. The Mavericks are really that top 1%, the people who have figured it out, who strive and have this hunger to become better. Whether it's out of competitiveness or desire to help others or make money, whatever it is, the why is, as long as it's positive, doesn't matter. You know, the A players and the B players, the problem you're going to have is that you're not going to have the job security. The A players will do fine. The B players, well, managers get rid of people in the order they don't need them. So C players, then the B players. And the problem that you have is if you're a B player with a bad territory, you look like a C player. Now, I got this comment on a LinkedIn post. by an operations guy who said, oh, it's all about the territory. And I go, that's exactly what a B player would say. Yes, territory is one element. Product's an element, manager's an element, comp plan's an element. But the better you are, the less likely you are to fall into the trap of settling for a bad company, bad product, bad manager, bad comp plan. And you would make the change very quickly. Any good manager is going to see the talent and put you in the right place. They're not going to explain it that way, but that's how the world works. It's called politics. Politics is unavoidable. Everybody says, oh, this company's got too much politics, this family, this team, this group. It's the nature. Study tribalism and mammals. This is what happens when you have more than two people. You get politics. You get people competing against each other, which focuses them on doing things that are bad for other people and good for them. Oh, no, that's not the way the world works, Brian. It should all be nice and peaceful. Yeah, it should be, but it isn't, and it'll never be. So, yes, you can have your little snowflake security and this sense of entitlement and happiness and getting a trophy for showing up. But not in sales. Sorry, that's not how it works. What I hear from managers when I talk with them is they're under insane amounts of pressure, and it trickles down. And it's hard not to trickle down. They got a big number. They need to overassign it. The requirements for the bullshit data is only going up because nobody wants to talk to anybody anymore. Nobody wants to understand. Everybody thinks they can just turn a knob and change something. Well, you can do that with a computer. You can do it with a machine. You can't do it with people. People are a little bit more complicated than that. So managers are in this tough spot. So they're not really open to it. It's up to us as salespeople to figure out how to get these large deals done. And they are not something that is solid until you get the order. They're really in flux. Think of a jury trial sometimes. People flip-flop. They could have a videotape of the person committing the crime, and they're like, well, maybe he was insane. Maybe the person deserved it. This is how people think. We all have cognitive biases. We have confirmation bias. We are blind to the obvious sometimes just to feel comfortable. And if you don't really study the politics of a deal, the politics of an organization, you're playing just a small part of the game. You're servicing. You're providing the presentation, the demo, the quote, and if they're interested, I'll negotiate and I'll close. But if the deal doesn't close, well, who do you blame? You're not going to blame yourself, but you paid it. You paid that price. The cost of that lesson was paid in the lost commission. Now, do you look at it that way? Of course not. That would hurt. I'm not looking at it that way. That's not enabling me, Burns. What are you talking about? But it is. I once lost this very large deal, and it hurt. And I learned. And I became way overconfident. And I had this larger competitor who basically just went around me and got the deal. It never happened again. I paid a six-figure tuition for that lesson. And I said to myself, I'm not going to learn this lesson twice. And you can say, oh, you're an idiot. Yeah, well, we all are. Yes, and we can rationalize it that we're human. But yeah, how many times do you want to pay that? Once is more than enough for me. A nice little Mercedes SL just drove out of my garage instead of into my garage. This is the choices we have. The sooner you learn these lessons and the longer you remember them, the less expensive they will be. Check out the courses at b2brevenue.com. All the times I know it's filling up to talk about them, but listen to the frequently asked questions. If the podcast makes sense and it fits the sale that you are at and you want to make money, sign up. What do you get with it? Okay, you get all the content that you can consume at your pace. You have a year-long access to it. You have two additional things. Unlimited one-on-ones, which is a 30-minute Zoom call with me. They come on a first-come, first-served basis. They're all recorded and put back in the course, so there's tons of examples. Very rarely is there a completely new example. It's usually an example of something that we've talked about several times before. And it takes a while before people buy into it. The first step is denial. That seems like a little bit too much work. Okay, don't do it then. Did you get the deal? No. Does it sound like a lot of work now? No. The other part is office hours, which is an hour meetup every other Friday on Zoom, where we just talk about the issues. All you have to do is be the squeaky wheel, come in with a question, and we focus on it. Usually you have to warm people up. I bring a topic, an issue, or I use one that somebody brought up from the last one or one of the one-on-ones to talk through. They're all recorded and put in the course. You never miss anything. All I hear is, well, it's not in my time zone. Okay, well, it's recorded. You can send your question ahead. Send me a video of what you're up against, and we'll talk through it. Where else are you going to get that? You going to get it from your manager? I don't think so. You're going to get it from one of the failed people on LinkedIn? Oh, which company you get fired from? Oh, now you want to be a trainer and consultant? Excellent. Oh, 3 fired SDRs. Oh, you're going to teach me how to be successful? You failed. How well could it be? Oh, you're going to teach me 20-year-old approaches? Good luck with that. It's up to you. It's your career. Make the most of it. You don't get a second chance. We'll see you next time.